Did I do that? No, there we go. I'm so grateful to be with you this morning. It's always good to be in the Lord's house together. And gosh, we've had some great things happening in the life of the church. Our new bishop, Bishop Jimmy Nunn, was here yesterday. For those of you who are here, thanks for coming to support that. We need to pray for our new bishop. I think he's going to be just the right leader that our conference needs. He's very authentic and real and has a real faith walk with Christ. I believe I can discern that in him for sure. And I think he's going to lead us in some great ways in reaching our world with the good news of the gospel of Christ. And so he needs our prayers. We need him. He needs us. So put Jimmy Nunn on your prayer list. He's the brand new bishop, been here 11 days of the Oklahoma Conference. Bishops don't have any great, power. It's not going to just change everything for us as a church. Things aren't going to just magically, go the way we want them to go. But the bishop does have some great influence, all right? So we need to pray for the bishop. Very important in the United Methodist Church and the United Methodist system. So pray for Jimmy Nunn. Put him on your prayer your prayer list and keep him in your prayers. Yesterday was a great day. Our UMW is here, had some good things. And the football, oh man, yesterday the football. Well, if you're a football fan, yesterday was kind of a mixed bag, right? The Sooners, wow, they won big. And OSU, whoo, man, the last sight, that was rough. And I know some of you are still in mourning. I've been praying for you. God bless you. TU kept it close, which is really good, and I appreciate it. But the real game was right out here on the Upward football fields where the Packers won. All right, my kindergarten through second grade. I don't think I'm really supposed to say that because we don't really keep score. But in my mind, I can tell you that the Packers just did great. I was amazed. About the first half of the game, they were kind of looking around like they really weren't sure where they were. But by the second half, we were scoring touchdowns and doing great, and so was the other team, and we just had a whole lot of fun. Lots of people were here yesterday, and I believe that Upward program is really going to be a blessing to our community and a blessing to the church, just a way to share the good news of Christ with. I want to tell you something. In Rogers County, I think, is probably no different than a lot of places in the United States. There are a lot of people that are just drifting, spiritually, sometimes emotionally. You know them. I know them. Maybe sometimes I'm one of them. But I want to tell you something. Don't be discouraged. Listen, I can count on a couple of hands the people who are hardcore atheists that they've studied the issue and they've said no. I can count on a couple of hands the people who are really against the church. I want to tell you something, friends. Don't believe all that stuff that you're hearing. Our world we live in is still wide open to the gospel and the good news of Jesus. It's not that folks have put up brick walls against the message of the church or against the message of the gospel. They're just drifting. They're not thinking about it. And they're all around us. We go to work with them. We play sports with them. They're in our families. They're just sort of drifting. And they'll continue to drift until some life event forces them to think about their relationship with God, or some life event pushes them into the family of God for support. And we love that, and we'll be there. We want to try to be there for everybody. But how much better when people hear the good news and can respond to it. And so don't quit doing your job sharing the faith. And don't think that all the odds are stacked against you, because they're not. There's a lot of folks out there who will hear the good news of Christ, who will respond to the good news that you share with them. They will. I'm talking about in 21st century America. They will. They're just drifting. They're waiting for somebody to help share some meaning and purpose and value, something bigger than themselves to live for. That's a free sermon. I wasn't even planning to go there this morning. I was really going somewhere completely different. Today we're starting a new series on the water miracles of the Bible. God likes water. Say that with me. God likes water. I really believe that. You think about the world we live in. Gosh, water everywhere. This morning you got a bottle of water. It's a gift from your church. There's a couple things you can do with that. You can either consume it here. It's drinkable water. It's good water. You can have that if you want. You can take it to somebody, maybe a neighbor or someone you work with. Give it to them. And on the side, where's Taylor? Taylor Teague. She was here a second ago. Wherever Taylor is, there she is. Taylor put labels on 1,000 of these things. Good job, Taylor. Thank you very much. And so we can take these out, and you can give them to someone, invite them to church. There's only one thing we ask you not to do with this. We don't want you to throw it in just a regular old trash can. We don't want this water bottle to end up back in our drinking water, okay? So there's some recycle bins right outside these doors. If you drink it here on the church, throw it in one of those. We'll recycle it for you. If you're not sure about recycling, let this be your opportunity to look around and see what you can do as a family, as a household, to recycle some of your plastics. There are options. They're not simple options for us in Rogers County always, but there are options. So look around and see what your options may be. We have some young men in our church that have a recycling business. They've had to give up on it. They don't have enough customers. If they can get a dozen more customers today, they said they'll start it again. They'll come to your house and pick these things up for $20 a month. So let me know if you want to be a part of that, and I'll tell these young men, and they may get started on that recycling project pretty soon. So also we have, you see the beautiful fountain, and I want to say thanks to Angie Kirk and Cindy for the beautiful fountain. And I love to hear the sound of running water in the sanctuary. It's going to be great to have that as we go through this water series. Someone says, well, I may have to get up in the middle of the service with that. Okay, that's fine. If you have to disappear for a while and come back, that's all right. We'll understand. Also out here, again, I was saying, I love the people in our church. Ask them for an inch and they'll give you a mile. All I wanted was a little bird bath type thing that you might rent for a wedding reception, that splashes a little water and makes a nice noise out here in the disciple hall. And I came in on Thursday, and if you haven't been out there yet, I didn't expect, a koi pond and a waterfall, right? It's absolutely beautiful. And are the Bowers here? They're usually here. The Bowers and the Butlers, thank you all very much for that. It's beautiful. It's awesome. It's awesome. And we're going to bring our cane pole and some worms up here later and see if I think there are some pretty good sized koi in that. God likes water. Think about, I had some retired friends that just drove coast to coast looking at this beautiful country, and they were amazed at how big the country is and all the things that there are to see and do right here without ever even leaving our own country. And no one would disagree with that. It's just what a beautiful place that God has provided. But those of you who may be former Navy, or those of you who have maybe traveled internationally, know that 71% of this planet is actually covered by what? Water. That's almost 3/4 of the planet covered by water. Sometimes we refer to the earth as the blue planet. And it's believed that because of all that water, we have such an abundance of life on the planet. 71% of our planet covered by water. Our bodies are something like 60% water. Anywhere from 55 to 60% is what I've heard made up of water. And think about that. And that's something you're going to want to remember, right? That's a very comforting thought. Because when I go in on the scales, in the morning and step up on the scale and it says 200 pounds, I say, whoa, wait a minute. And I think, 60% of that's just water, and 120 pounds of water, that's nothing. It's no big deal. And when you go to the doctor, and the doctor always tells you to drink more water. If you're ill, make sure you drink plenty of fluids. Now you can say, well, doc, I'm already 60%. I'm already at 60%. Do I really need more than that? And I think most of the physicians here would say, yes, you do. You need more water. Yeah, they're nodding at me. I want to make sure I say something right here, and I will. Drink more water. And water's an important part of our health. It's who we are. It makes up our bodies. But think about the biblical story, and that's where we're really going today. Think of all the stories personally from the Bible, and all of the ones that deal with water. I mean, from the creation of the world, when God's Spirit hovers over the deep, over the abyss, all the way to the very last chapter of Revelation, where there's this crystal river flowing from the throne of God. And all in between, God works miracles with water time and time and time again. The Exodus event for the Hebrew people, the key event in history for our Jewish brothers and sisters, when God leads the people through the Red Sea on dry land. As Christians, we get our very identity from the water of baptism. We're marked with water. Think about the stories of Jesus, calming the storm out on the sea, walking on the Sea of Galilee, the woman at the well. Think about all of the wonderful stories of the Bible that deal with water. This series could go on and on and on, but we're going to limit it to 5 weeks, looking at some of the water miracles of the Bible. Starting today, at the very beginning, I think that's a good place to start. Genesis chapter 1, verse 1. Turn in your Bible and follow along, or follow along on the big screen. In the beginning, when God created the heavens and the earth was a formless void. I'm not sure I even know what that is. The earth was a formless void, and darkness covered the face of the deep, while a wind from God swept over the waters. And then God said, "Let there be light." And there was light. And God saw that the light was good. And God separated the light from the darkness, and God called the light day, and the darkness He called night. And there was evening, and there was morning, the first day. This is the word of the Lord. Thanks be to God. Amen. From the very beginning, we hear about what God has done with water. As the wind of God sweeps across the water, as the Spirit of God hovers over the deep. You know, the creation stories in Genesis are foundational to our faith as Christians. Don't think that the Old Testament has nothing relevant to say to us today. It does. In fact, the creation stories are foundational for what we believe as Christians. They're there primarily for a theological purpose. They're not there primarily to teach us about science. They're primarily there to teach us some other things that we really need to know. They're there to teach us about who God is and who we are and what the relationship is between God and us. In the creation stories, we learn some important things. We're reminded and we learn that God is God and we are not. As simple a concept as that is, sometimes I forget that. God is God and I am not. Secondly, the creation story reminds us that we belong to God. God's the one who created us. And third, we're reminded that God is the source of our lives. And we do best as God's creation when we stay connected to the one who created us. The creation stories in Genesis are very important to our faith. And I love that second verse in the first creation story. Isn't that a powerful verse? The earth was a formless void. Try to imagine that in your mind. I don't even think I can wrap my mind around that. I don't know what that looks like exactly. The earth was a formless void, and darkness covered the face of the deep, this abyss, while a wind from God swept over the face of the waters. Isn't that beautiful imagery? Even though I don't think I can exactly figure out what they're talking about, it sounds in a way to me kind of like chaos. A formless void and God's Spirit sweeping over the abyss, and I imagine giant waves of huge proportion sweeping over the deepest oceans we can find. And this formless void of a planet, this primordial soup or whatever you want to call it. And God's Spirit is hovering over this chaos. And the reader is invited to think forward in the rest of the story. How God will take this chaos and order it into something beautiful and good for all time. God's Spirit hovering over the face of the deep. Just look what God can do with chaos. From the very beginning of the biblical story. I've been thinking about that a lot in my own life lately. You ever think about that? Wonder if God can do anything with the chaos of your life? I've been thinking about that a lot this week as I've reread the Genesis passage with an eye towards that. Look at what God did with this formless void, with this deep abyss when His Spirit hovers over the top of it. God is using that stuff, getting ready to create that stuff into this beautiful blue planet, this beautiful world in which you and I live and enjoy life today. So here's a question. My mind quickly goes, from time, in the past, we don't have any idea when this was. Time, long time ago, till today. And I think, was chaos still present today? Whoa. Well, of course. How about you? Anybody else in here sometimes experience chaos in your life? Like every day? Yep. Where are you experiencing chaos in your life right now? At home? At work? Maybe chaos in your own personal life as you try to figure out the answer to some important questions. As you try to make a decision about some important decisions that you have to make. Where are you experiencing chaos in your life right now? Friends, if you're there, it's time to sink or swim. Say it with me. It's time to sink or swim. One more time. It's time to sink or swim. We can either sink in the chaos or we can swim into new possibilities provided by the Creator of this universe. The opening canvas of the Genesis story is one of chaos. And God brings beautiful order and beauty and harmony to that chaos throughout the creative process. One of the questions I have to ask myself sometimes, are you ready to trust God with the chaos? My wife teaches swimming and has taught swimming for just a long, long time. And now she just teaches friends privately when they ask. But she says that it's a lot harder to teach an adult how to swim than it is to teach a child how to swim. And there's a reason for that, she believes. And that is that before you can learn how to swim, you have to learn to trust the upholding power of the water. You have to learn to trust that if you move your body, you don't have to move it very much, just a little bit in one particular way or another. You can depend on the buoyancy of that water to keep you from sinking. Children are more ready to trust that than most adults are. Most of us who grow into adulthood not having learned to swim, my friends I know that don't swim, are a little bit afraid of the water, and they don't trust very easily. They've heard too many stories or whatever it is. They have a hard time trusting the upholding power of that water, and that's the very first step. This morning, can we trust the upholding power of God's Spirit even in the middle of the chaos? Life certainly is full of chaos. I think about friends who go through divorce. Oh man, talk about throwing your life into chaos. My goodness. The things that used to be there are no longer there. The way you used to do life is no longer the same. My goodness. We can either sink in that chaos or we can trust God for some new possibilities as we rebuild a new life, perhaps in a new direction. I think about friends who get a bad phone call from a physician or from a lab somewhere. A friend of mine who has gone through cancer, still sort of going through cancer. Talk about chaos. Oh my goodness, you get that kind of diagnosis and suddenly all the things you used to think about were so important that you can't even think about those things anymore because you're thinking about this. And my friend going through cancer has gone through the chemo and is doing very well now and has found some new possibilities and kind of a new outlook on life. In other words, the things that she used to take for granted, she no longer takes for granted. She looks at life a little differently now. She sees beauty in every day. She appreciates things that she never used to appreciate, and she loves the special people in her life a little more deeply. We can sink into the chaos, or we can swim to God and swim to God's grace and swim into new possibilities for our lives. I think about the person who experiences a great loss or a tragedy or a great grief in their life. Talk about chaos. Throws your life into tremendous chaos. This person you used to depend on or talk to every day is no longer there, and suddenly life is just very different. And for a while, at least, it can be very chaotic, and we can sink in that chaos. Or, over time, learn to trust God again and lean on to some new possibilities for the future, some new possibilities for our lives. I don't know if you got to go, a few years ago, Philbrook Art Museum had a traveling tour with some paintings by Claude Monet. And I got to go down to Philbrook and see some of that. I'm really not a very polished art connoisseur, but, I appreciate world-class art. This is the sunflowers that he did. That was there at Philbrook for a short time. It's beautiful. Whether you're familiar with Monet or not, it's pretty clear, I think, to most of us who just had, a ninth grade humanities class, that this is a fellow who really influenced Western art, right? And if you think about whether it's the canvas of Monet or any artist that it's amazing when artists can take little this, little that, little splash of this color, little splash of that color, and come up with something so beautiful. Howard Herman does his stuff with the wood, the wood, the Intarsia stuff. You can take this kind of wood and that kind of wood and put it together, and suddenly it's this beautiful masterpiece. Well, I've looked a little further, and we have so much information available to us today. It's so marvelous. And I found a picture of one of Claude Monet's palettes under glass. There it is. Talk about chaos. Look at that palette. Now, if you're an oil painter, you can probably teach me something here today after service. I'd be happy to hear you. But to me, there seems to be no rhyme to read. There's a splash of yellow over here. I think there's some greens and some reds and some browns and blacks and blues and all that stuff just on that palette. It doesn't seem to be a rhyme or a reason to me. It's just all kind of out there. I guess when he was going for the yellow, he just kind of found the yellow I don't know how he did it. But that looks chaotic to me. But he took that palette that looks like chaos, and he painted some of the most beautiful art in the Western world. So I guess one of the questions for us is whether or not we can believe and trust God to take the chaos, whatever the palette of our life looks like right now, to create something beautiful and wonderful for the future. What looks like chaos to you may well be the palette from which God will paint a beautiful new future for your life. Friends, when we're in the chaos, it's time to sink or swim. Say it with me one more time. Sink or swim. We can sink in the chaos, or we can swim to God and into new possibilities for the future. May it be so. If you're able, will you stand and let's have a prayer together? God, we thank you for your love and for your grace. We marvel, O Lord, at thinking about how you've used water across time to do such marvelous miracles in our world and in our lives. Lord, specifically this morning, we thank you for the marvel of the creation. You created all that there is and will ever be by speaking the word. Lord, thank you for bringing order out of chaos when the earth was a formless void and your Spirit swept across the waters long ago. Help us, God, to trust you today. When life seems like a formless void, help us to sense your Spirit sweeping across our lives. To trust you, God, not to sink in the chaos, but to believe in the new possibilities for the future. May it be so, in Jesus' name. Amen. And you may be seated.